All right, so have you ever noticed how, like, someone can say one thing and then, like, completely change their tune?
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, it happens all the time, right? Especially when you're talking about public figures and celebrities.
Right. It's like they say one thing one day, and then the next day it's something completely different.
And it always seems to be happening online, too, doesn't it? It's like everyone's got an opinion, and they're not afraid to share it.
Yeah. And that brings us to today's deep dive.
Okay. What are we looking at today?
Well, we're going to be talking about, Kanye West.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And specifically his recent comments about Kendrick Lamar.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of a head-scratcher because it seems like he's gone back and forth on his opinions about Kendrick.
So straight from the headlines, basically.
Exactly. And it basically throws a spotlight on a comment Ye made that seemed to be pretty critical of Kendrick.
Okay, and is that unusual? Like for Ye to be critical of other artists?
Well, that's the thing. With just a month before, he was singing Kendrick's praises to, like, the highest degree.
Oh, wow. So a real shift in tone then.
Exactly.
Wow.
So we're going to be looking at both of these statements and try to figure out what might be going on.
Sounds juicy. All right. I'm ready to dive in.
Okay, cool. So let's start with the more recent statement, the one from March 15th.
Okay. So what happened?
Well, Playboi Carti, you know the rapper?
Yeah, I know him.
He announced the collaborators for his new album, and one of the names he dropped was Kendrick Lamar.
Okay.
And so Ye took to X, the platform formerly known as Twitter,
Oh, yeah, right.
and he basically said, quote, "I don't like Kendrick Lamar's music. He raps very good, but I didn't need to hear him on Carti album," end
Oh,
quote.
wow. Okay, so he's straight up saying he doesn't like Kendrick's music.
Yeah, and it's pretty direct. There's no, like, sugarcoating it or anything.
And he specifically says he doesn't want to hear him on this Cardi album.
Yeah, and it's interesting because he acknowledges that Kendrick is a good rapper. He even says he raps very good.
Right, so he's not saying Kendrick's talentless or anything like that.
No, not at all. He's specifically saying he just doesn't like his music.
Okay, so that's kind of interesting, right? Like he's separating the skill from the enjoyment.
Exactly, and that's what makes this whole thing so weird because just a month before this,
Yeah. What was he saying before?
he was giving Kendrick the highest praise possible.
Really? Okay, tell me more.
He was talking to Billboard magazine, and he said, quote, "If you rap against Kendrick, you will lose. This man does this. In Street Fighter, you get Chun-Li, you get a certain kick, and no matter what, you can't beat that thing," end quote.
Whoa, okay, that's a pretty big statement, right? Comparing him to Chun-Li like he's unbeatable.
Right. It's like saying Kendrick is the top dog in the rap game. There's no one better.
So how do we reconcile these two statements? Because they seem pretty contradictory.
I know, right? It's really strange to go from saying someone's unbeatable to saying you don't like their music.
And all within a month. Yeah, that's definitely something to unpack.
So what could be going on here? Like, is there any way to see these statements as not completely clashing?
Well, I think it's important to consider the context of each statement.
Okay, so.
In the Billboard interview, Ye was talking about rap battles specifically.
So like Kendrick's ability to compete against other rappers.
Exactly. He was praising Kendrick's technical skill as a rapper, his ability to win in a battle.
But the X post was about his overall musical taste. Like whether he enjoys listening to Kendrick's music on his own.
Right, and also whether he thinks Kendrick is a good fit for a particular project, in this case, the Cardi album.
So it's possible that Ye still respects Kendrick's rapping skill, but just doesn't enjoy his music personally.
That's definitely a possibility, right? He can acknowledge Kendrick's talent in one area, but still have different preferences when it comes to the kind of music he likes to listen to.
And maybe he just didn't think Kendrick's style would mesh well with Cardi's on this album.
Yeah, it's like you can be a fan of two different artists, but not necessarily want to hear them collaborate.
Right, their styles might clash or something.
Exactly. So it's not necessarily a complete contradiction. It's more like a nuance of opinion.
It's like saying, I love pizza and I love ice cream, but I don't want to eat them together.
That's a great analogy, actually, because it highlights how you can appreciate things individually,
Yeah.
but not necessarily want them combined.
Yeah, but even with all that said, it's still a pretty big swing to go from calling someone unbeatable to saying you don't like their music.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's definitely a noticeable shift.
So do we think there could be other factors at play here? Like maybe something related to the potential collaboration itself?
I mean, it's possible, right? Maybe there were discussions or creative differences surrounding the Cardi album that we don't know about.
Yeah, maybe he had a specific vision for the album and didn't think Kendrick fit into that.
Or maybe he was initially more focused on promoting Kendrick's standing in the rap world and wasn't necessarily expressing a deep personal love for his music.
Okay, so we're sort of speculating here, but it's definitely possible that there's more to the story than meets the eye.
Right. And unfortunately, we only have so much information to go on.
Yeah, true. But there's one more piece of context that I think is important to mention.
Okay, what's that?
Well, this report also mentions that Ye is currently making headlines for his anti-Semitic remarks and gestures.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's been all over the news.
Yeah, and it's a pretty big deal, obviously.
Definitely. And it's important to acknowledge that this context exists alongside his statements about Kendrick.
Exactly. Because it shapes the way his words are perceived by the public.
Right. Any opinion he expresses is going to be filtered through the lens of these recent controversies.
And it's worth noting that the report doesn't explicitly link these controversies to his opinions on Kendrick.
And we're not going to do that either. We're just sticking to the information provided in this source.
But it's impossible to ignore the fact that these controversies are part of the bigger picture.
Yeah, for sure. It's all part of the narrative surrounding you right now.
And to give you a sense of where this report comes from, it appears alongside other entertainment news headlines.
Oh, like what kind of headlines?
Well, there's a photo controversy involving Kim Kardashian, a supposed secret blooper from the Twilight movies, some news about Simone Ashley potentially working with Brad Pitt, and an emotional tribute to Liam Payne that took place in Argentina.
Okay, so pretty standard celebrity news stuff.
Exactly. So it gives you an idea of the kind of outlet this report is coming from.
Right, it's part of the regular cycle of entertainment news.
Okay, so let's do a quick recap before we wrap up.
That's good.
We've seen a pretty significant shift in Ye's public comments about Kendrick Lamar.
Yeah, from praising him as unbeatable to saying he doesn't like his music.
And all within the span of a month.
It's definitely an interesting case study in how public opinion can change so quickly.
And how context can play such a big role in how those opinions are interpreted.
Exactly. It's also a reminder that public figures are complex individuals with their own thoughts and feelings.
And those thoughts and feelings can evolve over time.
Yeah, and they might express them differently, depending on the situation.
So for you, the listener, what do you think about all this? How often do we see public figures contradict themselves? And what factors might be at play?
Is it just a change of heart? Different contexts? Or maybe something more strategic going on behind the scenes?
It's a question worth pondering, especially in today's world where everything is so public and scrutinized.
And it's a reminder that there's often more to the story than what we see on the surface.
So keep that in mind as you navigate the world of public opinions and celebrity pronouncements.
Because sometimes the most interesting stories are the ones that make us think a little deeper.
Exactly. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time.
See you then.